Intervju Radia Študent.
Danes gostimo umetnika, pisatelja in glasbenika Hassana Khana. Njegova razstava Gestus se je v Cukrarni otvorila v torek in bo na ogled do sredine avgusta. Khan je egiptovsko-nemški umetnik, ki prebiva tako v Kairu kot v Berlinu in poučuje na Städelschule v Frankfurtu. Razstavljal je v številnih svetovnih muzejih, nekateri od njih so njegova dela vključili tudi v svoje zbirke. Prejel pa je tudi številne nagrade, med drugim na Bienalu v Benetkah leta 2017 srebrnega leva za obetajočega mladega umetnika. Vendar ne mara, da se preveč govori o teh njegovih dosežkih in drugih pretencioznih rečeh povezanih z umetniškim svetom. Njegova razstava v Cukrarni se je poskušala preko samoomejitve, vsa dela so nastala v enem mesecu umetnikovega bivanja v Ljubljani, nekako prisiliti, kot nam je povedal včeraj, k dvema gestama. Po eni strani je Khan zasledoval neposrednost, poskušal je vzpostaviti čim krajšo pot med mislijo in delom, po drugi strani pa se je zapletel v lokalne produkcijske možnosti, sodelovanja z institucijami, glasbeniki, igralci, ilustratorkami in tako dalje. Pri nastanku 4 pesmi, ki se predvajajo na razstavi, je tako sodeloval tudi produkcijski studio Radia Študent. Tudi razstava sama je v tem smislu polna napetosti med komičnim in mitološkim, med neofašistično ikonografijo in internetnimi podobami. Welcome, Hassan, in the studio of Radio Študent.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. Yes. First question I wanted to ask you, because for our listeners and viewers who maybe don't know you and your work, is how you started your artistic path, because if I understand correctly, first it was connected with music and video, and then slowly it became, it entered the art world in the 90s. If you could tell me how that was.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a good question, because I didn't study art. I studied literature, comparative literature. But as a student, I was involved in, different kind of little scenes that this is in the early 90s in Cairo. And part of that was also making music with friends. And it was really like very small and very contained. And very, its own thing. It was kind of, I would say, formally very kind of experimental without labeling itself as that. And also because of, I guess, luckily so, I had a very wide background also, just from my family, etc., just culturally speaking. So I had been exposed to a lot of, again, very different types of things and influences from experimental American cinema of the 60s to classical contemporary music, to different things, also from university. So all this mix, and without really categorizing anything, was producing stuff. And then in 1995, I did a sort of piece with a friend of mine, Amr Hosni, which was a slideshow of images that he made, and I did the sound. And we showed this to an audience in the Atelier du Caire, the Kairu Atelier, which was a sort of official, but kind of independent, old school cultural institution in Cairo that had, like poets and writers and some painters and this kind, but really of a different type of generation and different type of idea. And we were like 19, 20. And we went to this, event to show this piece we had done called Lung Fan, in Arabic Nafas, in English Lung Fan. And we thought, that we're going to show this and people are going to be like, oh my God, this is incredible. We will be like applauded. And we were like torn to bits. So the person who invited us, who was smoking a pipe, really, literally, stood on stage and smoked a pipe and said, we wanted to give a chance to young people, and this is what they do. and then the audience was just accusing us of trying to brainwash them, of really, kind of crazy stuff.
What was the content of it?
Well, that's what's interesting, that the content was not like this. I think has relevance till today. The content was intensity, but not necessarily, decipherable meaning. And I think this is what freaked them out the most, because I think it was also this kind of interesting moment where two different worlds meet. And I guess this intellectual climate of this older generation was very much invested in nationalism, but old school nationalism, not like the new nationalism we see now, but more like this kind of statist nationalism of the 60s, and which is also in like the case of Egypt related to post-coloniality and also paranoia of the outside world. It's all mixed together, these things. And then I guess us then, when we were young, working with this kind of different language that was not against or with this, didn't even think about this. This was not relevant. So I guess that really kind of threw them off, and they felt like, if they don't have something clear to hold on to, that we must be trying to brainwash them, I guess. Because also the sound was like, there was noise and this and images. It was like this kind of work somehow. But what's interesting about the story related to, I guess what we're going to talk about today, is after this experience, we left. There were some friends of ours who were like, it's great. And we went to have some beers and sat and talk. And, I was kind of like, both me and Amr, my friend, we were the co-authors of this piece. We were like a bit like, what happened? We were a bit confused. But I was also like very seriously questioning myself. I was like, okay, so do I have the right to make something that is rejected by, before this we were doing things, it's just friends who are of a similar kind of age, ideas, more or less, sensibilities, etc. So it kind of works. But this was the first moment it got exposed to the outside world. And it was so, aggressively rejected that I felt like, do I have the right to do this? Who said, what is this arrogance? Who says that I can say these things that, people don't accept? And, sorry, excuse me. And then, so I had to think about this. And I thought about it, and then I decided, yes, I have the right. I have the right to do this, to do kind of whatever with forms, and that is important. And that without that, actually, then, it's not that things don't change. Things change for many reasons. But without this kind of input, it's how are you going to be able to produce new meanings or even question the status quo? So that's, yeah.
But this event that you're describing, basically, from what I hear, what you experienced was a really strong effect of something that you did. Like, it produced something. Do you think that was important to you then, to see this effect of your work on the public?
I guess, I mean, of course, because I got this big question and I had to think about it, and then I decided. When I decided this, then I think I became an artist, and I could call myself that. But I don't think we were aiming for sorry, excuse me. I don't think we were aiming for we were aiming for impact and effect, of course, because we were so in a way also passionate about this work, about these sounds, these images, how they work together. So there was a real investment in this and a real belief in what it could do, but we didn't imagine that the effect is that. We were not looking for that. We were not looking for shock, and because it wasn't even also part of our focus as such. We were just following a certain kind of some ideas and connections and, working with images and sound. And there were themes in it, of course, but it wasn't like a visible narrative, Yeah.
But did this change later when you were you go to all these museums, places, you have big exhibitions that are met with acclaim, not anymore with shock or outrage? Did your relationship to art or your artistic practice change?
Yeah, of course. I mean, this was when I was 19, 20. Yeah. I'm now 50, so 30 years.
And what did change?
So a lot changed. I mean, first it's there's just the fact that one becomes professionalized. So yes, of course, I've been working in this with a lot of mediums. You gain experience in a different way, and you also understand the structure you're working in. And also, of course, the contemporary art kind of nexus, part of what it does is make, all propositions kind of acceptable. I'm not a fan of thinking that, that something that creates outrage or something that doesn't is better or worse. It depends what it is, and it depends what it wants to do. So I'm not invested in this idea of outrage at all. I think I'm just invested in trying to produce work that follows certain ideas and goes with them as far as possible and works with form and hopes to create certain experiences for a public and then see what happens. And I do take into account this framework, this art framework, which is, I think now has become a bit difficult for me to also deal with, because after what's happening in Gaza in the past 2 years, mass killing and genocide, it also really threw a pall on all these things. What does it mean? How does it work? I think a lot of other fields managed to absorb and deal with this kind of better. And in contemporary art, maybe because of its institutional nature, maybe because of something in the way it references itself all the time, it has been a bit difficult.
You mentioned that also on the tour of the exhibition,
Yes.
that you have not really put a lot of works on display in the last few years in Germany, where you also work and live. Is that connected to this situation that you're describing?
I partially live in Germany because I teach there. And of course, Germany is a very complex place, and the reaction to what is happening in Palestine has been terrible. And a kind of there's almost a mass form of delusion that is happening there. But it's also been very educational for me to be in that context, because it sharpened my questions of what do you need to do with where you are? So when I'm in Germany, if I was not living in Germany or partially living, I live between Cairo and Berlin, but if I was not partially there and working there and paying my taxes there, if I wasn't that, then I would have just maybe refused to do things there, and that's it. But because I'm there, I think it's important to be visible and to be able to produce meaning and relevance even within this context. That became the question. So yes, of course, it wasn't automatic that I just show anything at every single invitation that has come to me in the past 2 years or a year and a half, or since October 7th, 2023. I've had to think very carefully about and craft a very, very clear response and then make something very specific for it. And that opened up a lot of questions that, wider questions that also are relevant for the exhibition I did here. I think I decided to do this exhibition here partially because of this experience in Germany, and partially because of the little works I did there that I really did feel they worked. And I felt that I was able to show something in such a context and not lose my self-respect, for example. And that was kind of important. And so that sort of, it has this, it just kind of spilled over into, when I got invited to do a show here, for me thinking how to do it and, kind of create another system for it.
If I understand you correctly, you kind of return to this question of this question that you described from the start of your career, which was, do I have the right to present some objects or any objects that I want? But this time a little bit differently.
Yes, of course.
More maybe in the sense of how do you present, maybe more or less connected to you personally and more to the context in which you find yourself.
Yeah, of course, because the context is different, age again is different. I mean, it's totally different in that sense. The questions, but what's similar is the fact of this kind of strange self-questioning of my tools. And, I guess when I was 19, and this situation happened, I thought about like, do I have the right to do this in the first place, like publicly at least or whatever. But now it's not if I have the right. I know I have the right. It's a bit like, how do you do this? So it's a little bit different. And also interestingly enough is that I didn't have these questions in over these 30 years. So even, you know, like huge events like the revolution in Egypt in 2011, and there are like people, colleagues and stuff who like stopped for a while and thought about it and what do you do? I really had none of these questions. I just was like, I felt like what I was doing made sense with this, and it like all made sense to me somehow. So I didn't have these questions. But now this is different, and somehow I feel like these questions really arise, and yeah.
And have you formulated a kind of answer, at least provisional answer to this? How do you work?
I mean,
in such conditions?
like you just have to every time work something out. That's what I think at this point. So, you know, therefore, for example, in the show here, I decided to do this process, you know, and this process is to produce everything from scratch in Ljubljana over the duration of the 1 month I'm here. I mean, I arrived on 16th of March, and the show opened 15th of April. So our 16th of March was a Sunday. I arrived, and next day, 17th of March, Monday morning, we were working already.
Yeah.
So we were just already started. And I met you on Monday.
Yeah, we met on Monday.
But I had been doing things already during the day. So it was really like immediate. And this kind of attitude, I think, was it was very useful because, so for example, I had this idea, I want to produce posters on my phone. And, you know, like everyone, or like most people, you know, you have your phone. It's a very intimate thing now. People use it for so many things. People take photos of things all the time. And I also take photos of things that, you know, things that I see that I think of as notes. It could be a doorknob. It could be something in a museum. It could be something in the street. It could be something, whatever. They're just notes. They could be visual notes. They could be conceptual notes. They could be political notes. They could be whatever. And this is ongoing. I have thousands of photos of these notes. And even what's interesting is sometimes I visit the same country 3-4 years apart, and I discover that I've taken the same photo. You know, like the same thing has attracted my attention, basically. And if something attracts your attention, I think it's important. It must mean there's something important about it. So all these notes exist. So deciding to do posters on your phone, which also means that most of the visual material I was using was from the phone itself, also like from just my archive, but also things I took also while I was here, but not exclusively. It was kind of open. But what was important, that was all produced on the phone, and was all produced not with like any app, but produced with the basic structure of the phone. And by doing this note taking is transformed into writing. So, I mean, not writing linguistically, but also posters have language. So this was also very useful. But also like I could then really start to work in a way that I haven't worked in. Maybe, I mean, I've worked with language, I've worked with even with statements somehow, but really always different, always very articulated, you know, very precisely maybe or whatever. But with this format, I could like wake up at 5 a.m. and like take a weird photo of myself and distort it and do something, and it's a self-portrait. So there is a personal side to it, but I can also, you know, just like take a hand that I saw online and treat it with the picture filters that are just native to the thing, and then, you know, paint on it with the picture brush that is on it. Europe is evil, you know, and like making a statement like that so directly, I would never do that otherwise, you know. People are involved in the nuance or even like Fanon is not a Nazi, which is actually the first poster I made for this series.
Yeah, you showed it to me the second day we were here, basically.
Yeah, because funnily enough, this photo of this book, which is a biography of Goering, this Nazi leader, with a pin of Fanon's head instead of Goering's head. It was a photo I took because I had this pin of Fanon, and I had this biography, and I just put the pin on it just, I don't know, like 6 years ago or something. I took a photo. It was just like a little joke, like a meme, as you kind of mentioned. But I never posted it, I never sent it, and it was just there. And I've always thought about it, like it always came back. So when I started doing these posters, I remembered it and dragged up and kind of like created this thing. And just a quick note for the listeners, maybe Fanon, just to make an insert about who Fanon is, because I think it's relevant. Fanon is a very important post-colonial revolutionary figure and thinker and psychoanalyst who from Martinique, and who was a French colonial subject, and who worked in Algeria and was secretly also working with the Algerian resistance, and whose writings have influenced, of course, liberation movements and post-colonial thought very, very directly, and who has had a big influence on me when I read him when in university. So when I was a teenager, actually. So So I think, something like this.
So this story with Fanon goes deep.
Yeah, it goes
for
deep,
you personally.
For me personally, yeah.
And I'm interested also in this immediacy that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Is it kind of in this exhibition, in the way you did it, is it kind of an experiment to, research a little bit the effectiveness of the artwork or producing the artwork? You said that you had trouble, or you questioned how to make a statement. Was this something for you that was very present in your mind when you were trying to think of this exhibition, or did it come kind of spontaneously? And how do you think, is it an effective practice, this immediacy
okay.
that you discovered?
First, not just how to make a statement, but even if you're allowed to make a statement. So these are the constraints of contemporary art, for example. This kind of like suspicion of statements, which I also share, because, when I was 19, I was in tension or in grit or grain with this older generation who are really into statements also. So there is that. But I think contexts change and times change. And my feeling is that the statement has returned in a different way. And it's possible to look at it also with the rise of virtuality and this culture. Statements have acquired a different meaning now. And I think it's become part of the medium that one should work with, not everyone is free to do what they want, but like I am interested in working with this. And I wouldn't have been able to make these statements. Also, there's a lot of others that are like not as like direct as the examples I gave. I don't know. Once nostalgia and lost causes walked into a bar. Once upon a time, nostalgia and lost causes walked in a bar. I don't know, something like this. So a sentence that is written really in less than a minute. You're not sitting and crafting it. And of course, then you allow yourself to just do that and to print it and also you're doing it on the phone, which means that its quality can be compromised, although it's surprisingly good at the same time.
I must agree.
Yeah, it's surprisingly good. But like also, the fonts, whatever, these are all these restrictions that creates a medium. You have a medium now you can work with, but it's a medium that allows you to be immediate. This is, one way, but it's also like playing music somehow, like you can take that freedom. And I guess I've always wanted to, and maybe when I was young and I was telling you the things I was doing then, also with videos I did in the late 90s, they were less, I always kind of sort of missed their energy, because they had this kind of energy where it was just something and you just do it. And it's not about rough or not or finished. It's something else, that the attitude behind it trusted the immediacy. And I think that as with time, as things get a bit crafted, like this relationship changes naturally. But it feels now that it's important to regain this, not just on a personal level, but also under current conditions, under current global conditions. It's important to regain that, I believe.
So this was these posters, 45 posters that you did. They were kind of, kind of an experiment in style of making statements.
I guess,
or practice in style, stylistic practice in making statements. So, were you concerned at all about the content of statements you're making, or just the practicing making a statement?
Well, of course, the content is important, but it's because you are working in this kind of like hyper fast way because of the whole project has to happen in this short time. So you don't really, I mean, you think, of course, but you don't really get into the crafting of it. So you're forced by the conditions to not get into the crafting of it. And I think that was important for me. So it's not just that these statements don't mean anything or they're random. They're not random. They are all very, very, very important to me. And they're not just statements also. They're like there's lots of things happening with words and images. All these posters are playing with these things, some direct, some a bit less direct. But I feel like actually there's complexity in it. But it's a language I would not have been able to do without this setup, for sure. I'm pretty sure that that's the case, yeah.
Maybe this is a good connection to the title of the show,
yes.
which is Gestus, Brecht's term.
Brecht's term, exactly.
What does this concept mean to you? Because when we were, we were making, we were recording the songs that are on the show here,
yes.
And you were, I think, a little bit mysterious at some point. You didn't want to influence too much our perception. So from the people that were participating in it. So now I would use this opportunity to ask you.
Okay. Well, I mean, first, I use the term because I like it. I like how it sounds also. I just like gestus and how it relates to this word gesture. And I like what Brecht says about it, but I'm not trying to do what he's doing or to claim that that this show is Brechtian or anything like this. There could be relations, but so I'm just like taking the term and using it. But that reason why I'm doing that is because when I came across his ideas about Gestus, I felt that they resonated with things I've been doing for a long time. Not exactly differences, but they resonate in some ways. The basic and most central idea that I feel like was shared somehow was this concept that a gesture holds within it, the whole edifice somehow. And for Brecht, the director and the actor's work is to allow that edifice to come through and to work with it and to do something about it. So that to me, I can share and can see, and has been something I've worked with since the 90s with actors always, with this kind of like, in a very different way, but kind of like thinking that it's a self-delusion somehow, but that, you're working with this actor, and therefore this actor is not just that person. They are really the sum total of human experience. And I keep this idea in the back of my mind as I work with them, because I feel it allows to really take anything and work with it. And so there is some strange connection, though maybe I'm giving it another like color, but there is some strange connection. But the thing about the mysterious, this is specifically related to, I think, this project with the songs, because, there are 4 songs. There is an EP that is called Gestus EP by the band Gestus. The band Gestus is a fictional band. So it's a band I put together here in Ljubljana from excellent musicians from the excellent music scene of Ljubljana. So there's a bit of promotion here but anyway, so I put, with the help of Jaka Berger, who's the drummer who was in the band, he really helped in getting the musicians together, and we worked. I wrote the 4 songs while I was in Ljubljana. So I wrote the lyrics of these 4 songs, and then I scored the 4 songs for the musicians as we were gathering them, and then we had 2 rehearsals. So in these 2 which is very, very, very little to like make an EP.
I can tell the listeners that the end result is really impressive considering the time constraint.
Yes.
It doesn't sound like it was made in basically 3 days, one meeting and 2 rehearsals.
Exactly. So in the rehearsals, we worked on them. First I met them and I explained to them the idea, and they were, of course it's a bit strange because I also asked them that they're going to have alter egos, but also they were amazing because they were so flexible and willing to step out of their comfort zones and try something new. So all of this was great. And in the rehearsals, we worked on the songs. I had clear ideas about it. Of course, as you work with these kind of things, they played, we tried, and we, after the first day, after we did the first 2 songs, then we had a moderated session where I kind of reenacted, because, after this they played here in the radio and then you interviewed them. So I did that. I did that with them. I sort of like interviewed them and to kind of like get shapes of characters from them. And through this conversation, because they were all a bit in the beginning like skeptical, like, oh, what is our character? Tell us the character. And I didn't want to do that. And I said, just trust this process. I'm just going to ask you questions, make things up, whatever it is. But of course, this is not random. What they make up is not random. It's informed by the framework we're working in. It's informed by the lyrics of the song. It's informed by the kind of questions I'm putting towards them. So this is like a bit, how can I explain this? This is a little bit like working with people or working with the situation as if it's a filter. Mm-hmm. So you have an idea as an artist or an author, you're writing a song and you have an idea and you're putting it out there. That's fine. But in this case, I'm trying to put it out there not just as my idea, but also as my idea as filtered through a fiction that is based on real conditions. Because also these musicians, and this relates to Brecht's idea of Gestus also, these musicians and me and you and the radio and everyone, we are living under these conditions. So I'll write a song about the new age and the frustration with the new age or whatever, and like as a song with its own poetry and everything. But then if I give it to them and they play it and the singer sings it, they start to also have their own little feelings and interpretations of it. And I'm interested in that. And I'm interested also in, getting some of my ideas, which are not exactly their ideas. So, but I didn't want them to just be my mouthpiece. So it was really like a give and take. So also that when they come to the conversation, they can say these things. And then there's also some ideas that come from my ideas, and it's a mix. But also what's important, actually, the gesture behind all of this is that you're creating a fiction that is treated as a reality and that inserts itself in the circulation of reality. So this band suddenly existed. They played a concert. They were interviewed. The EP, was kind of launched. So you've done that. And then that's something that's in the world that, it will not do something so big, but that's part of the logic of, I think, maybe transforming things somehow.
Yeah, and that connects also to what you said on the tour, pointed out while we were walking among the works, that the important thing for you is that they should not be seen or read symbolically, but or that you don't look at them in that way, but that you look at them as kind of machines, some kind of that are producing some effect or are trying to produce some effect, and that I guess is also connection with the concept of gesture as such, so that they should kind of act on their own. How do you think about that?
Yeah, that's my ambition. That's a big ask, but I do think that's at least my ambition for some works, that they are not there to be read, yes, symbolically, or to be read in a way. They're there to create, to generate, and it's not just to generate a response, but to generate a situation somehow. And I'm also interested in doing this not by doing, site-specific intervention, or, you can do this, but in these works, at least, that's not the point. It's really to produce aesthetic products, which are artworks, that at the same time can operate as these machines. So these pieces that are printed on metal sheets, for example, they use a strong visual language. They use digital illustrations, computer-generated imagery that is all like based also upon things that I've worked with before, based upon this kind of investigation into the language of, new right-wing politics and how it creates political capital in a certain way through meme culture, through different methods, and of course through the figure of the grotesque, the grotesque clown or the grotesque joker or whatever. So that's, these works have this kind of interest in them. And I was trying to design them in a way where the viewer, hopefully when they see them, they're attracted, partially repelled, partially like when they walk around them, they see different kinds of things. If they see the piece which has on one side a big red X and on the other side has two figures, a stuffed creature and a figure based on a statue of a comic a grotesque face of a comic, it's actually a Chinese statue from, I think, the 6th century or 7th century. But then the X is like also on the other side, but kind of like as if it seeped through the metal. So these kind of things where you feel, or like with the hand, the piece, I call it the magic trick, where there's like these hands that are digitally illustrated. This is taken from a photo I took of a statue of a saint in a shrine in Italy. And we just, took just the hands and created a digital illustration of it that I feel is invested with all this kind of intense emotional content that exists in the saint and the shrine and all of this. It's really there. And just watching that disappear by an action, which is by another hand that comes from an animation, a Disney animation actually. But just watching that disappear, I feel like that does something, that does something that has a lot to do with our beliefs and our faiths, and witnessing the disappearance of such a strong gesture is already like a gesture. And I'm hoping that for the viewer, that this can be strong enough that they do not need to try to decipher it, but that they can experience it as this operation. I mean, that's a bit, but this work works differently than other works in the show. This is the other thing that I think the works are all, the works are all connected through their interests and even through shared kind of visual cues, but they do different things with them. I think that's important also.
Yes, and one connection, at least I perceived, was some kind of tension in a lot of the works. It might be, on the aesthetic level, so that the aesthetic is trashy, but the words on the posters are very serious or something like that. Or in the metal pieces, as you described, there is, you didn't mention it, but there is also this picture that you pointed to us
of the leopard?
Tour of the
hybrid.
Of the fire.
The lighter.
Lighter, thank you.
The lighter.
Of the lighter that has matches on it.
Yes.
Or this combination of the comic and the kind of sinister X that you already mentioned.
Yes.
Or the slightly transformed image of Pepe the Frog from the meme culture. And
it's a hybrid of Crazy Frog and Pepe the Frog.
Crazy Frog, thank you, and Pepe the Frog. And it's this kind of tensions. And to me, when I listen to you, one of the most important, one of the themes that stuck in my mind was this theme of comedy or some kind of lightness combined with seriousness, even in the sense of a threat, maybe politically, especially in the maybe most prominently in the piece in which the songs are included, where you have a printed basically a trace of an AfD poster with Sieg Heil hands making a home. It's a famous poster. And on the other side, this glass object that is meant to evoke a comedic gesture, comedic S, yes, thank you. And then you have, again, the flag that is made from two pieces, one very unserious, very
monstrous, though. Monstrous. It's like a monster.
Grotesque, maybe is the word, and one very dignified, very old, stitched together with a very obvious and coarse stitch.
Exactly.
And this piece kind of connects all of this, in my opinion at least, or how I saw it, connects all of these tensions that are also present in other works, and kind of puts them almost literally on a stage.
It is a stage.
Because it is a stage.
It is a stage. And I'm interested in stages. And there are two posters that have stages. One that says genocide stage and one that says the stage is set.
I might have thought of a stage because of those two posters, because I saw them on the
Yes, so there is, But of course, this work was also the most difficult one because it didn't exist till the last day. In the sense that I knew from the beginning, actually that's one thing I knew from before coming to Ljubljana, that I told Mara, the curator, and Lenka, who was working on the production. We were having a Zoom or something, or maybe I wrote by email. Oh yeah, I asked them to take photos of what they had in storage, of leftover material, wood, whatever, you know, and I thought I'm just going to do something with whatever is there. This in itself is a common gesture. Artists many times do things with like leftover walls and things, and fine. I would say it's never been really like my style in quotation marks. I haven't been into this kind of stuff. But my interest here was not like just the aesthetics of like whatever is there. It was also literally that I will just use, it's again the constraints. So the interest here is the constraints, not the aesthetics. That, okay, this material is there, I will do something with it. I will try to produce something with it. And, you know, when I thought I have an interest in stages like for over 20 years, and I've worked with platforms and stages and stuff, and I think they have a very powerful presence, and they do something psychologically to us. But, you know, I started creating an assemblage, even from the very beginning in the basement, you know, before we took it up. The moment we took it upstairs, everything changed because the context changed. I had to rethink it, rechange it. I knew that emblems will be draped. I knew that this AfD thing, the thing that is based on the AfD poster, will be part of this. So basically, I'm building a sort of stage that is kind of a house, and the songs are playing kind of in this house. I mean, it's also playing on all these kind of emblems. And the thing is, like, it was in the space, I was kind of disappointed. I was like, it's not working. Something is not working. I knew, I mean, I had done also this glass work. Also, it was one day, the work with the glass, Mr. Zvonko, who's a glass maker, and who doesn't speak English. So it was very like, you know, he seems like a nice, humorous guy. And I wanted to work with comedy and glass. So we kind of like made some weird faces and jokes and worked and did some things. But I mean, I did show him like the comedian shaking his ass. And I explained to him that I don't want to make a glass ass that looks like exactly, but that this is just the evocation, that it takes something from this kind of vulgar sort of crazy thing, but that is very basic, and I want to make it in this way that is like has some beauty in it. And I knew that this also should work with this constellation on the stage, but it was difficult. But when this glass object really found its place, when we made the plinth for it, which we also made from leftover material and just glued it together, when this worked, suddenly the whole piece worked. So this is also interesting to see in terms of a process of working, that works don't, and I actually believe in this for a long time, and I've worked that way for a long time, works don't necessarily come made. They're discovered. There's also a process of discovery. And in this case, this was a discovery. There was a discovery that suddenly that's how it will work, you know? And that's why one can go to formal things and say, you know, this 1 millimeter or this, it's kind of a strange contradiction that I'm speaking about immediacy, rough, but also the very precise kind of like way of putting things together actually creates meaning as well. So it's, I don't know.
I saw it as a very, you know, it evokes maybe a political stage.
Yes.
It evokes a gallery. It evokes a concert stage and a home, as you said.
Yeah.
Very different images. That I think it's very relational in some sense, because if you look at the flag and the glass object, it's different than if
absolutely
than if you look at
the illustration.
The illustration.
And if you look at the illustration, you can see the glass object and you can see the leopard behind it. Yeah. I mean, yes.
And then the songs maybe are playing, maybe they are not playing.
Yeah.
It changes a lot.
It changes. Yeah.
And but what I think in some sense it works like maybe a diagram or a kind of analysis of relationships, not so much as a statement. It doesn't provide you a clear, you know, this
Absolutely.
is something, this is something else.
That's true.
How do you think about this presence of analysis in your works, of analyzing this moment of we live in?
Yeah. I think that, I mean, I've had a very conflicted relationship with analysis because I studied literature. So, and I studied critical theory and literature. And I mean, always, I don't know always, but for a very, very long time, I really did not believe that analysis is enough or that critique is enough. So at least in artwork, I mean, I find critique is important and interesting, but I don't think that an artwork that produces a critique is enough. I believe there has to be something else that it can do. So it's a conflicted relationship, but I also have a sort of training in that, and I also understand how, and I'm also interested in analysis in some ways. So I guess I'm trying to find paths where analysis becomes something beyond itself. Because maybe, also just to take it a step further, maybe analysis is an actual analysis is always beyond just a breaking down of elements. Maybe an actual analysis is like something bigger. I know this sounds a bit vague, but I don't know how to explain it. But to go back to the piece, I don't have a title for it yet. Maybe I will not have a title for this construction. But I do think, for example, for me, this is a place where there's something operational happening. It is like operating in some strange way.
Yes, because all of these elements kind of meet and construct something,
Yes.
which can be very different. Yes. From the angle, the persons, and so forth.
Yeah.
And also it's maybe a good piece, although far from the only one on the exhibition, to mention the other direction through which you worked.
Yeah.
It was not only the immediacy, which you discussed quite a lot, but also another constraint that we also mentioned a little bit in connection with musicians, connecting with, people, institutions, collectives. Because when you came to Ljubljana, you also didn't yet have the band. You didn't have the actors for the film or video.
The film is called The Great Escape.
The Great Escape, yes. It looks impressive because it's shot in the fundus of Viba film, and there's all these clothes and very narrow walkways through which actors move very deliberately, I would say.
Yes.
It's quite, it has a strong visual signature, I think. So you came here basically almost unprepared, and had to find these connections, make these connections, and also find a way to work with constraints of either individuals who maybe didn't have time,
Absolutely.
whatever, and also institutions that you work with.
Course.
Why did you decide to try to engage with local artists and craftsmen, and you mentioned the glass in this way?
I mean, okay, I don't.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. So first is that, and that's also has to do with what contemporary art is, just historically over the past 30 years, or more. Artists, and there is a whole tradition of it, most of the time don't produce actually the work. They work with producers because they also work in very diverse fields. Some things they do themselves, some things they do with others, like, a glass piece, they design it and then they get it produced. And I've worked in that way for a long time, but actually I've rarely, only with specific pieces, but a lot of times I've also worked with, not really with designing something fully with measurements and stuff, but actually like working with the actual person. Like almost like a director works with an actor. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit also these kind of experiences I've had from different mediums kind of dissolving into each other. So I've worked with glass people before where, we've tried things. I mean, also have this interest in comedy and glass. I've been trying to do something with it. This is maybe the first sort of successful piece to come out of it. But I've worked with people like this before. We've played games. I've showed them like bits of crazy Egyptian comedy and talked about it and tried stuff. For example, I've worked with also like in very, very, very low end workshops in Egypt that are very basic, with someone who's just shaping glass and just like kind of like as he's shaping them, I'm telling them, try this, pull it like this, push it like that, a bit really like a director. And the same, I mean, here also with Mr. Zwonko, it was a little bit this kind of process. So I come from that process in general. That's part of my experience in general. And I guess here it's just heightened because of the nature of the duration of things. And my interest is because I want to produce these different mediums. And I think it's important for this show to have this richness for it to really work. It cannot be like one or two things. It needs to be quiet a lot so that you can experience this as a landscape of things with transformations and changes, and that you can really get really engaged and work with all these layers. That was really important, I thought. So that's part of it. But then also when you work, and this I knew from my other experiences, even the very straight ones where you design something and they produce it, there are always problems. You cannot bend this if, you want, and also because, artists work with non-generic things. So usually they ask for things that, are not, in the beginning at least, not possible or unexpected or not what people are just doing for the product. So that also comes, So I've been many times with many different kinds of, people working with ceramic or glass or metal or, very different mediums in these kind of like problems. We cannot do this because of this. We cannot, and we try to find solutions. And in the end, we find solutions. But what's interesting for me that always in this discussion and this dialogue, and I have a dialogue with all these people, which I think are very, very interesting and rich, these ways of solving these problems also are full of ideas. Ideas, practical ideas, but also political ideas, but also even philosophical ideas. They're not spelt out as this, but they're there. They're latent in this conversation. So I've always felt that that's really an integral part of producing anything that gives it meaning also. So my interest here was also working with as many kind of different fields and infrastructures and studios and as possible, that it will enrich the work through the conditions they come from. They will come from this condition, they will come from this condition, they'll come from this condition, and they will bring something from that is the guest of the time or whatever, but they will bring something from that will be part of the work. And I thought that's partially why I also wanted to do that. So,
what was it for you that, if you look now back at it, with this idea in mind, what did it produce, this process?
Yeah.
To you? As you
my
look
finger is wounded. Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's one thing it produced. Okay, I'll be serious now. What did it first I have to say, first I have to thank everyone who worked on this, but sincerely, because I was really impressed by how everybody was so flexible. Number one, it's kind of incredible that people had this flexibility and were willing to enter this kind of, I'm doing this experiment. I have my reasons, but, all these people have their own lives. Why would they do this? It's stressful for everyone to just suddenly be put in this, we're going to make an EP in 3 days,
Very,
of course,
ambitious.
But people, or make a film in we shot in 1 day, we rehearsed 2 days with no script, with nothing, and to generate, this. But interestingly, I was really impressed by that. But interestingly, a lot of the people, and I can claim that, and I claim it with confidence, have said that this was a good experience for them. And I mean, that's really important and valuable. I really think it's valuable. And I believe in this. I don't believe in this kind of way of working the old school auteur directors who go crazy and shout, and even if they make amazing things. But I don't believe in that method at all. I believe in this other method, and I believe it can produce amazing things as well. And so I think people actually, I thank them all because they were so flexible and so willing to try things. But also, I'm losing my train of thought. But yeah, the whole experience was amazing, of course, for me, because first that it happened, and I could see that it can happen, and I feel it opened a pathway for me somehow also to think, it's not that I'm going to do things like this, it's not that the next show I will do it like this again. I don't think it's about that. It's about just discovering tools and methods and meanings. And because the world is changing so fast, this also means you have to change all the time, I think, or I'm just talking about myself. So I think that's one thing. And maybe I'm too close. I don't know what it actually really produced in total. One last thing I want to add is that maybe, because it's not part of the production, I didn't really speak also about the discussion with the institution, with Cukrarni, which also was amazing because they really accepted, I told them, they invited me, I came on a site visit, we spoke, I looked at the space, and I decided to do this thing that is very risky. And when I was not there, they kept sending me emails. They're saying, tell us what you need. Tell us what kind of actors. And I was like, I couldn't. I really couldn't. I tried, but I couldn't. And I wrote them back and I said, you just have to trust this process. I cannot do anything till I come. And they did. I mean, that's what's amazing. They did, and they committed fully to it. So they really helped. They really went out of their way to make everything work. They trusted this process, and that's also was amazing. But I wanted to say something, and I don't know. It kind of flew out of my head. I was saying something. I don't know because I'm too close. I said that, but there was something else that...
Do you have a takeaway from... this is the last question.
Okay.
Do you have a takeaway from... working with all of these people in a context that you don't know?
Yes.
Does it give you any kind of answer to the question of how artists can make a statement today?
Yeah, I mean, it's two things. One is that yes, I'm working in a place I don't know, but I knew that, and I'm coming in to do the work here. But I knew that it wasn't about trying to come and do work about that place. So I'm not trying to take that position. I know that, also as an Egyptian, I, understand the anthropological kind of like issues with this kind of attitude. And I've always disliked it intensely. But what I can say is that we share conditions. So if you speak about conditions, you can work in maybe not anywhere, but in many places. And it will make sense because that's a shared thing. And I think that's part of like the contemporary world, is that we share conditions. We can have many differences, but the conditions are very global. So we are dealing with the same monsters somehow. Mm-hmm. And that's one way of, bringing things together, I guess.
I think it is. Yeah. Thank you, Hassan.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
To je bil intervju s Hassanom Khanom. Jaz vodil sem ga vid, za tehniko je skrbel Luka Seliškar. Hvala pa tudi ekipi RTVŠ, da so posneli tudi video.
Intervju Radia Študent.